So why did I make a game about the pharmaceutical industry? I think it offers a number of really interesting ethical dilemmas that you wouldn't normally get in a game like this. For example, what other industry has you making decisions that you're not just thinking about the good of your company, how much money you're going to make, but you're also thinking about the people who are receiving your products, and are they satisfied? So what games was I influenced by? I think number one on that list is Transport Tycoon. It's still one of my favourite games of all time. I still go back and play it now and again. And I think I choose that in particular out of all the kind of tycoon games that there are, like Railroad Tycoon and all the other tycoon games, because it's about transport systems, and that's what Big Pharma is about really. It's about optimising transport systems. In a way, instead of railroads and kind of road networks, you've got production lines. There's also kind of an influence from Prison Architect, because I think that game did so well. It managed to kind of take that business sim idea and then apply a bit of satire, a bit of a theme that hadn't really been explored before in a game. So I took a lot out of Introversion's book when designing the game. Do I have a background in the pharmaceutical industry? No, I don't. I came at this from a complete novice background, really. I guess the only part of my own experience that I put into the game is I'm actually from a mechanical engineering background. So in a way, I can put my kind of knowledge into the machines and the process engineering side of it, but not into the pharmaceutical side itself. What is my strategy when I play the game? Well, I like to go for a kind of very high margin, kind of low cost, high margin strategy. So I like to kind of tech up to a few machines so I can get access to a couple of kind of winning cures. I always start by looking at how much demand there are for different cures, and then I just try to really optimize those production lines by pumping upgrade points into the machines that I'm using most. Just to kind of make as much money from those few lines as possible. Of course, that can go wrong if one of the competitors comes in and starts to muscle in your own territory. That's maybe where my strategy falls down. I've been programming since, I guess, my early teens. I've been making games as a hobby since I was very young, but it started out as pen and paper, tabletop style things, just using counters from other board games. Me and my brother once made a game based on Monopoly where you had to build houses. It was based on a whiteboard where you'd have to build houses by just drawing squares with marker pens. And then we used the money from Monopoly to generate rent, and you could build out roads and all this sort of stuff. We made up the rules as we were going along. That was my first kind of my first experience of game design. And then in my teens, I moved to programming, and I never really looked back. I think the hardest thing for me when making Big Pharma was trying to align the kind of ethical dilemma kind of part of the game with the mechanics. I'm a very mechanics-driven designer, and so I'm not happy if I'm just paying lip service to a certain a certain idea. I really want that idea to be kind of fleshed out in a mechanical way, so it puts the player kind of in that position, and so that they're actually having to do something, and the decision they make has ramifications. And that was really hard to achieve in the game, getting those to line up. The most complicated part of the game for newcomers is probably the multi-mixer. It's caused widespread confusion amongst the budding pharmacists playing the game. I think with part of the reason it causes so much confusion is because there's this very little talked about mechanic in the game, if you like, which is every drug or ingredient has these 4 slots which can be filled with certain curative properties or side effects, and this is never really talked about in the tutorial, and most players just ignore this. And the multi-mixer, basically, it's very different to every other machine. It allows you to actually change the kind of physical makeup of your drugs, in that it moves these effects, these side effects and curative effects it actually combines two of them together. And people don't really realise that these kind of slots are ordered, and they really do make a difference to how that particular machine works. So why am I making Big Pharma? So many games are about destruction, and I wanted to make a game about creating something. It's hugely influenced by tycoon games like Roller Coaster Tycoon and Transport Tycoon, and Capitalism 2, which is a bit of an older one. Oh, and games like SimCity. And I think there's something very special about this particular type of sim game, in that there's normally only one resource, which is all about is money. And it's normally pretty instantaneous. You can rebuild things quite quickly, which is different to some kind of resource management games like Civilization or the Anno games or Settlers. And that kind of gives you this really kind of very quick, reactive experience. And it's generally about investing your capital in creating little systems that generate you trickle revenues. And then you use the money that you get from those things to build bigger systems that get you more money, and then you kind of go in this circle until you just have loads and loads of money, and there's something super satisfying about that. I think one of the reasons I wanted to make a game, a business sim game, was because I run my own business, and actually that process of investing your money in creating a revenue stream for the future is just really satisfying. It's what I do as my job. And I wanted to make a game which allowed me to do that in a kind of, in a quicker way, because it takes years to create a business, but you can create a business in Big Pharma in a couple of hours. So what makes Big Pharma special? I think for me, personally, what I really like about the game, and it's going to be different for different players, it probably comes down to three things. So one of those is automation. It's a game all about automation. It's about setting things up and then leaving them, knowing that they're going to do what you want them to for the rest of the game. And that gives you a sense of control, which I think is really satisfying. It's also about, and I've just kind of touched on this, the balance between creation and of chaos and control. Now, some games have lots of randomness, lots of stuff that comes in and kind of can mess you up. And I've kept those elements of Big Pharma quite kind of strictly to things that are outside of your factory. There's very little that can come in and directly mess up your factory, like your machines explode and that sort of stuff. That doesn't happen, and that's very deliberate. I think it's a really kind of peaceful, kind of happy place to be, Big Pharma, and I wasn't trying to make a game where you're constantly having to react. Like, it's not about reaction time, it's a cerebral game. It's about making decisions, and then whether they're right or wrong, you'll see the consequences for the rest of the game. And the final thing I really like about Big Pharma is that it's very discrete. What I mean by that is everything that happens in your factory is kind of modelled by individual elements. So you import a single ingredient and you can watch it travel through your factory, and you can see your machines processing it and see how it changes over the course of your production line. And I just love that. Games have a level of randomness ranging from no randomness at all, like a game like chess, or loads and loads of randomness. And it's a decision that every game designer has to make, is how much randomness do you want in your game and how much do you want the mechanics to be purely deterministic. In Big Pharma, the balance I've tried to aim for is I don't want any randomness that seems unfair. So I don't want anything that just screws you up when you don't think you deserve it. So generally speaking, everything that you do will have a consequence, and some of those consequences might come back kind of with a certain level of randomness. But you won't ever be punished unfairly in Big Pharma, which I think is a good thing. If I could give some advice to other developers, the first thing I would say is really give a lot of thought to like the idea of your game. I know that sounds really obvious, but I think it's so easy to think about what you can create rather than thinking about what you should create. It's with the powerful engines that are available, like Unity, these days, it's very easy to kind of go, ooh, like window shopping, like, ooh, what features does my engine have? And like drag and drop them into your game. Don't make a action-adventure platformer with block puzzles because it's easy to make that. Think, does the world really need another action-adventure with block puzzles? Think about what game you're trying to create and then work out how you're going to make it. I'd say don't skimp on GUI polish. So I think a level of like GUI polish can, that sounds weird, GUI polish, can really add a lot to a game. Like, so personally, what that means for me in Big Pharma is I spend a lot of time making really nice little transitions where things kind of faded in and out and things would tween. Yeah, tween crap out everything, it would be my advice, because people love tweening. I get like tweets from people saying like, just opened up Big Pharma and it looks very shiny. And I honestly think that's, you know, partly to do with the artwork, but it's also partly to do with just like little touches like tweening and fades. My advice would be to pay for some really good artwork if you're attempting to make a commercial game. And you can be smart in your design of the game to minimise the amount of artwork you need, but honestly, you can't skimp on kind of graphical fidelity, even if you're trying to create a kind of small, whatever, indie game. It's much better to create very stylized but simple art style than try to create something that's very complicated and do it badly. I'd always give people the advice that they should try to create a stylized art style rather than something very realistic, because it's so difficult to make something actually look like real life, and you should probably just leave that to the AAA studio. So my artist is my brother. Not a lot of people know that. And he actually was so excited by the idea for the game that he just went off and, before I'd even commissioned him, went off and just started doing some concept drawings. And he just came back with these drawings, which were basically kind of ready-made, almost in the form of Big Pharma right now. You know, he did a load of different versions, and I kind of picked the ones that I wanted. I only found out kind of a few months later that he had been really influenced by Theme Hospital when he was making these concept drawings. And although they're not illustrated kind of just sprites, they're actually made via kind of 3D models, animated in a separate program. The kind of colour palette you'll see really similar, lots of kind of blues and purples and these kind of mid-tones and pastel colours that Theme Hospital use a lot of.